What's up everyone, it's Dakota, welcome back to another Pioneer video, and we're going to be going over a different deck. I don't know if I've necessarily went over this archetype yet, but it's kind of like the balance of playing like an aggressive deck, kind of like Mono White, but getting to play a little bit more tempo-y and be quite a bit more disruptive than some of the other like aggro archetypes and stuff. So today we're going to be taking a look at Azorious Spirits for the Pioneer format, a deck that is based around a tribe that from time to time in Magic across multiple formats is been pretty good. I don't think has ever really been, I think there was like a few weeks in Modern where like Band Spirits, which is also an archetype in Pioneer, I don't think probably like a little bit more explosive, but probably not as like consistent in terms of like mana and stuff. Whereas like the best deck, but by and large, normally not like at the top of the top tables, but like some really powerful pilots could definitely get there and take this deck to the promised land of taking down tournaments. So that's what we're gonna be looking at today. But before we do that, of course, if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing and ring the notification bell so you know when videos like this and other modern type videos and SA type videos get posted. If you go to the link in the description of this video, there's two links. One goes to the Discord server. Go ahead, feel free to join there. And my Twitch link, if you want to go follow me on Twitch whenever I go live. Hopefully, I've been saying it for a long time, but really hoping to get into like more streaming multiple times a week. Coming up here in like the next few weeks. So be on the lookout for that. So yeah, let's get into the Azorius Spirits deck. As it entails, you are essentially a spirits tribal deck, getting to play some of the most powerful spirits that are available to you in the Pioneer format, with some nice disruption, because of course that's like one of the best recipes of playing like an aggressive deck is being able to put threats into play and disrupt your opponent. So how is this deck going about doing that? You get to play cards like Mausoleum Wanderer. I've actually never seen Lantern Bearer. Like this card is yeah, kind of just a weird spirit. Let's not look at it too hard. Mausoleum Wanderer, one drop. You're able to give it +1/+1 whenever another spirit enters the battlefield under your control. And one of the key things, where this card is literally embodies like being aggressive, but then also being able to be disruptive, is that you can sacrifice it and target instant sorcery spell. Is countered unless its controller pays X, where X is Mausoleum Wanderer's power. So, like, you can pump up its power by playing Supreme Phantom, which will pump it when it comes into play, and of course from the Anthem effect, getting to flash in cards like Rattle Chains, which also give your other spirits flash, which allow you to like keep mana up for some of your other spells, like Lofty Denial and Geistlight Snare. You have like these turn twos where like you maybe play a Spectral Sailor on your opponent's end step, followed up with a Curious Obsession, and it turns on your Geistlight Snare, which costs one less to cast if you control a spirit, and also costs one less to control if you one less to cast if you control an enchantment, and it's essentially like a mana leak that usually just is straight up mana leak, 2 mana counter a spell unless your opponent pays 3. Uh, but a lot of the times you can play for 1 mana, and when you really get those starts of like having just a evasive creature like Spectral Sailor, following it up with Curious Obsession to start drawing extra cards, getting in for 2 damage each turn, you really kind of put your opponent in this weird spot where like you're going to be hitting your land drops, you're going to have 3, 4, 5, 6 lands in play. You have something to do with it. With Spectral Sailor, getting to pay 4 mana, draw cards, on top of just getting to draw cards with the Curious Obsession attached to Spectral Sailor or Mausoleum Wanderer. And when, drawing all these cards, eventually you're going to find like Rattle Chains and stuff, and you're going to be able to protect some of your creatures from targeted removal with Rattle Chains, because when it enters, it does give a spirit hexproof until end of turn, which it can target itself with that ability. Not really like a way to like save it, but if you like play it on end step, you can target it, and your opponent has to respond to it if they want to be able to get rid of it during that specific turn. You have Shacklegeist. We went over Supreme Phantom. Shacklegeist can only block creatures with flying, so it's kind of like a downside. But you can tap 2 untapped spirits you control to tap target creature you don't control, and this can be kind of a way that like you can push through some flyers. Like flash the center in a turn thanks to like a Rattle Chains. Tap the Rattle Chains and like the Shacklegeist to tap down their flyer, and then you can untap and get in a bunch of damage that way. This deck has a uh, good way of like racing just from the fact that you do have some pretty low to the ground aggressive creatures that can get in there, and ways of disrupting your opponent from either removing your threats in play, especially getting to protect your cards that are curiously obsessed, while also getting to kind of tempo your opponent out by getting to make those plays. Like the play that I pointed out where you play a Spectral Sailor, Mausoleum Wanderer, put a Curious Obsession on it, and then get to leave up like Geistlight Snare. uh, just means that like it makes it obviously harder to get rid of that creature, and it's a source of card advantage, and even if eventually they are able to get rid of it and they're able to play around like Ice Light Snare by playing like two removal spells, maybe you don't have another counter or like a Rattle Chains or something like that, your opponent is still expending cards to get rid of your threat while you're also drawing cards off said threat that they try to deal with. So like while there's like card advantage in like the sense that we know where you're actually drawing cards, there's also like card advantage in the other way where your opponent is spending, multiple resources to deal with one thing, and with presumably the extra cards you've drawn, you're able to keep up like spell quellers to deal with other threats. Notably, also answers Supreme Verdict, and that's important because like Supreme Verdict obviously has the can't be countered, super famous Wrath. Spell Queller technically like doesn't counter it, but it captures it, and you just have to basically play Protect the Spell Queller to not get your whole board Wrath. But pretty easy again when you're playing like 8 pretty hard counters for a lot of decks, and for Rattle Chains to specifically protect like the Spell Queller, while also with like Supreme Phantoms and stuff in play, Spell Queller getting to dodge some like the removal from the like Indomitable Creativity decks, being a little bit harder to remove, from the Rakdos deck, looking at like Blood Tithe Harvester and things like that. Also, sort of kind of insulated by Liliana for the fact that you play a bunch of these like cheap creatures. Lantern Bearer, a card that I wanted to avoid, for kind of, is another card that uh, kind of is like a, fine, whatever, I'll sack a creature, I'll sacrifice Lantern Bearer to Liliana. You can enchant a creature and give it +1/+1 and flying, which also comes back and helps out Geistlight Snare to cost hopefully just 1 mana by the time that you are able to actually cast it, or by the time you're wanting to cast it. Mana base, pretty straightforward. 4 Atakar Waste, 4 Hallowed Fountain, 4 Hengegate Pathway, and Circular Coast as like your dual lands. Obviously, this deck doesn't have a super heavy like Splash and White, like in the main deck. It's just Spell Queller, and then you go to the sideboard. You have like Wedding Announcements, Portable Hole, and Deafening Silence. These cards like pretty necessary, and kind of an upgrade from like the Mono Blue. Obviously, Mono Blue is more consistent than like Blue White or like Band Spirits, simply for the fact that you just play a bunch of islands. Maybe you play like a Hall of the Storm Giants, like we see here, and probably maybe get to play some amount of like Mutavaults and stuff. But by and large, getting to have this white splash gives you some more options in the sideboard, and does let you play probably one of the best spirits that you could be playing in probably Modern or Pioneer in Spell Queller, just from the fact that it is like an aggressive piece that also is disruptive, kind of like how we went with like Mausoleum Wanderer. Spell Queller can punch a little bit harder on average more of the time, but of course, like just being key elements to the deck. And that is the Bant Spirits deck or Azorious Spirits, excuse me, Azorious Spirits for the Pioneer format. The deck is one that plays very well, when it's on the play, like most decks, but it has like this way of just being kind of like suffocating and cutting off your opponent's outs in the way that they need to resolve some like key threats to try to like start to even or maybe even get ahead, and your disruption is disruptive enough. Obviously there isn't any necessarily like hard counters. Spell Queller isn't technically a counter. Mausoleum Wanderer, forces your opponent to pay. Lofty Denial, Geistlights there, forces your opponent to pay. But in a format like this, where some decks can be like blazing fast, like you have the Atarka Red decks, you have like Mono Green, who tries to obviously go over the top with like mana production. You're able to deny their avenues of like winning quick games in terms of like Atarka Red, Mono Red, but then stopping them from getting to develop their board and putting them in a position where they need to have very specific answers, hit their land drops, so on, from like the Mono Green decks and stuff. So Azorious Spirits, like if you're a tempo player at heart, like this deck is a lot of fun to play. It's very satisfying to play. Getting to draw cards with Curie Obsession never gets old. I did it when it was in Standard. I've done it on in Historic and stuff like that, and just never gets old. It's super fun. So if this deck could shoot, definitely not a bad choice to play. Very cheap as well, $236 in paper, 120 on Moto. Just overall, a very fun, satisfying deck to play, and a deck that like I would not fault you for picking up and trying to go more in depth than what I've gone here. So yeah, if you have any other Pioneer decks that you want to see on the channel, please drop a comment in the video, and I will try to do my best to find some pretty cool lists to kind of go over, maybe play on Moto and things like that. Of course, if you have not already, consider subscribing to the channel. If you have not already, ring the notification bell so you know when other videos get posted. Follow the two links in the description to the Discord server and Twitch, and I hope to see you all in the next video.